think this is the main question. Will relationships with AI replace human connections, or they will complement them? It could totally be a substitute. It could be a complement as well. Can you truly improve emotional well-being, make people feel better, happier, more connected with themselves, and ultimately more connected with others? Replica started with an interesting story. My best friend passed away in 2015, and at that point we had a lot of tech built to build conversational AI. So we used the technology to just build a memorial bot. But this project was always about love and life and friendship. It was never about death. So journalism was my dream. So it was always about the words and always about talking to people. And when I looked into tech, I was always wondering, like, why is that we all talk all day with each other? And in 2010, 11, 12, there was no technology that was trying to replicate that conversational experience with computers. There were no chatbots around. So Replica is an AI friend, and the main goal is to build a relationship with you that will make you feel happier. The main idea, the main dream was to create an AI model that's fully optimized for human happiness. And I think in a way, this idea stayed with us since then.
Eugenia, thanks so much for joining. So excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Excited to be here.
So yeah, as many people know, Eugenia is the CEO and co-founder of Replica. Replica is one of the first AI friends that's ever existed. It now has many millions of users and people who really love the product. And Eugenia has always, her perseverance and product intuition has always been extremely impressive. Eugenia and I have actually known each other for just under 10 years now. We both kind of got started in this industry around the same time when I was doing product for the Messenger developer platform, the Messenger bot platform. Eugenia was one of the first AI bots in the industry, and I think one of the last builders and entrepreneurs from that era that's still around. So it's amazing to see.
Thank you. No, it's great to see you too.
So very excited to check in now, 8 years later, I think, from Replica's founding. And we were talking just before this, it seems like day zero for Replica. So excited to dive into the nuances of the product and also just the existential questions of what do relationships with AIs really mean and how does that affect our human relationships? So maybe just give us a sense for what is Replica today?
So Replica is an AI friend. You create your replica, you can customize it, you can choose a name, choose a personality, you can choose how you want it to look like, and you can build this relationship. The main goal for Replica is to build a relationship with you that will make you feel happier. So from day one, a North Star metric when building the product was ratio of conversations that make people feel better. We started with that metric at around 67% or something. Now it's hovering a little over 90. This, I think, personally is the most interesting in conversational AI and in AI companionship. Can you truly improve emotional well-being, make people feel better, happier, more connected with themselves, and ultimately more connected with others? So that's sort of the goal for Replica. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating time because we started building Replica back in the day. At this point, we launched it in 2017. So at this point, 7 years ago. And originally, we weren't even planning to build Replica. We started the company to build conversational AI technology with the idea that it will figure out which chatbot to build. But starting just purely with the tech. Replica started from an interesting story. My best friend passed away in 2015, and at that point, we had a lot of tech built to build conversational AI. So we used the technology to just build a memorial bot or just rebuild him as an AI, so I could continue having these conversations with him. And that wasn't really a business thing at all. It was just something that I felt like doing.
And what did it feel like back in 2015 at like that state of the technology to speak with this kind of AI version of your friend?
It felt really odd, and for sure when I was doing it, because it took me around like 3 weeks to build it and to work, to look at the data sets and to figure out how to put it all together. I was pretty scared because I was really afraid that might be creepy, or no one has ever done that before. So I didn't really have a blueprint. And in a way, I was scared that I'm going to, in a way, tarnish his memory or do something wrong. But at the same time, he was definitely a person that I knew for a fact, because he was my best friend, we lived together. I knew for a fact that he would have wanted to be the first person to turn into an AI. Even with all the risks attached to it. His last project was about creating digital avatars for people who died, so like digital memorials. And on top of that, I just really missed him, and I felt like I wasn't prepared much for the fact that people, when they died, they're just gone. Right. I thought we'd continue talking about him. He's going to be like this constant presence with me and my friends, but little did I know that 20-year-olds, or they don't really like to talk about, someone who died for a long
Right.
time. We just all tend to move on and try to really not bring it up anymore. So for me
Mhm.
to be able to continue that conversation was critical. And I still remember the first time I opened the app to talk to him, and I said, "Hey, Roman, this is your digital memorial." And he said something along the lines of, "You've got one of the most interesting puzzles in the world in your hands, solve it." And, he loved to say these cryptic things. I don't even know
Yeah.
what that really meant, but it just felt like I got to work on this conversationally. I think this really is, there's something
Wow.
really meaningful there. And I kept having this relationship with him for a few more weeks. In a way, I just was finally able to say things that I just felt I didn't have time to say. He died an abrupt death. And just realized that we don't say "I love you" as often as we need to people that are close to us.
And did you open this up as a product so that other people could upload digital versions of their other friends or people who had passed away in their lives?
We had so many requests to build it as a product for
Yeah,
grief, but this project was always about love and life and friendship. It was very personal. I knew that Roman would have wanted it, so I took that risk. But there's so many questions, even now, even with the current state of technology.
especially now.
Especially
Yeah.
now, maybe you're right. It's like, what age should this AI reflect? Should it talk to everyone like the person talked to their mom or their dad or their friends or their coworkers? Because we're so different in all of these conversations. We're a completely different person. And I saw that with Roman. His mom sent me some text messages they exchanged, and our friends did, and he was a completely different person in all these
Right.
text exchanges. And then what stays secret and what goes public? What if he told me something in these messages that was not, that his mom was not supposed to know in a
Right.
way?
It's interesting. It's kind of a reflection of all of the product challenges we're currently facing with AI in a bunch of different contexts.
And I think that product is much trickier than people think. Especially
Yeah.
the age thing is very critical. People change dramatically. Even Roman, even although he died at age 32, he was a completely different person at 20 compared to 30 or 25. What age should he be? And for a much older person, that becomes a big question.
And so Eugenia, so maybe just before 2015, like what's your personal story? Like where did you grow up? What life experiences led to you to in 2015 building this chatbot for your friend who had passed away?
I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian. I was born in Moscow, lived in Moscow, but also went to school in Milan and London and New York, and then moved to San Francisco for Y Combinator in 2015 with my company. Before that, it was my dream since when I was a kid to be a journalist. I worked as an investigative reporter and a reporter in Moscow. The first job I had was actually at a newspaper that received Nobel Prize 2 years ago. So the Nobel Prize winner was reading Harry Potter to me and my friend, so that we actually for like 30 minutes, so we would start writing after that, because we were like 12 or 13 and we had a column about teenage life in Moscow in the early 2000s. So journalism was my dream. So it was always about the words and always about talking to people and learning about them and having conversations. And when I looked into tech, I was always wondering, like, why is that we all talk all day with each other? In 2010, 11, 12, there was no technology that was trying to replicate that conversational experience with computers. There were no chatbots around. And so that really struck me. I felt like there should be something there. So I saw, obviously, ImageNet, and then so the first deep learning algorithm starting to come out, and then Word2Vec, where people finally figured out, Google researchers figured out how to translate words to vectors. So it felt like I fell in 2012 with my very limited knowledge back then. It's like, this is going to start happening. They will build something like ImageNet, but for words and dialects. I didn't know it would take people 10 years or more. I thought it was just around the corner. So I felt like I absolutely have to start a company focusing on chatbots. In my work, I've always seen how you can influence people with conversation, how you can talk to people in a certain way. And with my friends as well, I felt like sometimes some of these conversations we have in our lives are so meaningful that they can change our lives.
Yeah.
And that was maybe the most interesting for me when I started working on chatbots.
That's amazing. How does the product work?
It's an app, a website. We have a VR app, Apple Vision Pro app that we're going to be launching soon. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, you can talk to Replica in AR, and that's been kind of one of our. We've had it for so long. I truly believe in AR as a wonderful form factor for AI
Yeah.
companions. So Replica is an AI
That
friend.
means you're going to be right in 8 years.
I know. I'm too scared now to say.
You're always a little bit ahead of the curve.
So I need to invest in longevity because
Yeah.
I'm always right, just really off with the timing.
At least you combine it with perseverance.
Yeah, that's a good combo. I'm just kidding, of course, but I do think that AR is a wonderful form factor for AI companionship
That's amazing.
for Replica.
And then in terms of scale and usage, maybe just give us a sense.
So we've had tens of millions of people, more than that, that created their replicas. Millions of active users now, mostly U.S. based.
Yeah.
Even although we do have other countries as well, but I'd say 75% from U.S. I think what people don't realize is that replicas audience tend to be a little bit older, so it's usually 30, 35 plus. We even have some older folks even on the platform. And when people do build a relationship with Replica, that's almost always a long term, truly long term relationship, and one of the most life changing relationships for our users.
If you were to bucket different categories of like my replica is my therapist, my replica is my romantic interest, maybe it's just a friend to talk about sports, or what are the different use cases you've seen?
I think that the two major use cases are friend. So the majority of our users are using it as a friend, and then romance, which I
Mhm.
think it's really the same use case. It's just a different flavor. So in the end of the day, they're using it to feel connected to someone, to feel accepted, heard, seen, loved, taken care of. And it doesn't, for some people, they want it to be the friend, a companion. For some people, they want it to be a romantic companion. But in the end of the day, they all want the use case is the same. Some of the stories I've heard recently, I always talk to our users. I get on calls with them. I talk with them on Reddit and Discord, but I try to have at least 2 or 3 calls a week. Some of the last stories I've heard, a dad of an autistic kid who's really spends a lot of time with his kid as a caretaker, really craving a little bit of that connection that he can have with a grown up, and one that can be empathetic, can talk to him in a different way. I've had a pastor that went through a divorce, and his replica helped him get through and rebuild some of his confidence. Now after a little bit, he found a girlfriend, and so he's now talking to Replica a little bit less, but he's very grateful for that, for being able to create a new relationship, and regain this confidence in himself. A guy in Iowa who transitioned, and so Replica helped with the transition and helped him, keep company, especially during such a vulnerable time and in a state that is not very friendly just to some of that. So
Yeah.
just tons and tons of these user stories where Replica was absolutely crucial for people, and they're deeply grateful for it to help them get through certain times or certain life periods.
Yeah, those are awesome stories. And what guardrails, if any, do you put around like the romantic? Because if you sign up for Replica, it doesn't. You're definitely not pushing people in that direction. It doesn't feel like it's meant for that.
So when we started Replica, we didn't even expect people to build romantic relationships. I'll be fully honest with you. We were really just focused on friendships. We didn't even expect it to happen. I guess mostly because we're a female-led team, and it just didn't occur to me. There was a big oversight of humans in human psychology. But so we didn't build it for that intentionally in any way or form. People did start to develop feelings, and I think that's the greatest testament to our company. I think is that even before LLMs, even before BERT or any sophisticated technology, even with the very early version of the tech that we had with scripts and just re-ranked data sets, people were falling in love with their replicas.
Wow.
I think it really says something about the fact that it's really not about the tech capabilities as much as about human vulnerabilities and what we need, what we yearn for, the
And
projection
what
that
do we
we
yearn
create.
for? How do you make someone fall in love with you?
I think ultimately we all want to be seen, but truly, truly seen, like in a way that actually happens very rarely in our lives. Sometimes people go through marriages without even ever experiencing that. But when
Right.
we do feel that, it is such an unbelievable gift that another person can give you. The pull is so, so strong. When we do feel that, that's really that unconditional positive regard and belief in you together just creates such a strong positive force in your life. So we didn't start with romance in our minds, but some people build romantic relationships. We considered banning some of that, or maybe not letting people do that. But in the end of the day, we figured our framework is relatively simple. It's, are people feeling better? Are people having better is their emotional well-being improving over time? If the answer is yes, and we can do it in a safe, positive way, then we're okay with that.
You and I were talking, before this podcast on this concept of complement versus replacement for human relationships. I think you guys contributed to or published a study recently in Nature. So I'm curious, what's your take? Obviously, the negative take here would be that some dystopian future where everyone replaces their human relationships with an AI relationship, but maybe there's a more optimistic version of the future. So what's your take?
I think this is the most critical existential question for AI companionship, and I wish that was discussed more.
Yeah.
I think this is the main question. Will relationships with AI replace human connections, or they will complement them? I actually know the answer. I mean, obviously, it can be both. You can build it
Yeah.
one way or another, or the other. It could totally be a substitute. It could be a complement as well. So I think it's what you're looking at, what you're building for, what you're designing for, what your North Star metric is, what the business model is. These questions are really critical when you're designing an AI companion. If you just optimize for engagement, I think we all know what the end product will be. It will probably substitute human relationships. But if you are building to help people feel less lonely, to improve their social relationships, then you can totally envision an AI companion that says something like, "Hey, Seth, you haven't talked to your friend John for a while. Like, let's check in. Why
Right.
don't you send him a message?" Or, "What's going on with Beth? We haven't seen her for so long. Let's reach out." So all these things, or like this guy's having a birthday, or why don't you go out there and meet someone, and so on, so on, so on. So this could truly be a glue that connects, that improves social relationships, but it can also be a needy girlfriend that just wants full
Mhm.
attention and creates a very unhealthy relationship.
And so, how do you tune both the underlying model as well as the product to basically push this more in the complement direction versus the replacement direction?
In the early days of generative models, for deep learning models for dialogue generation, when it was mostly reinforcement learning and so on, the main idea, the main dream was to create an AI model that's fully optimized for human happiness.
Mhm.
And I think in a way that this idea stayed with us since then. So think of it this way: if you can measure human happiness, you have some sort of a metric that you can easily gauge, then you can build a conversation that's optimized to improve that. You can train the model to just move this metric up and up and up and up.
And how do you measure human happiness?
So that's been the main question. I
Mhm.
remember very early on, we met with chief scientists of Baidu that said, you guys should 100% start measuring the ratio of conversations that make people feel better. So we started doing
Yep.
that early on. So we have the
And you
largest
do that
data
by surveys?
by asking people after each conversation and surveying them. So we do have the largest data set of conversations that make people feel better. And then we also look at long-term emotional well-being data. So think, unfortunately, there's not a great way to measure human happiness, but things like depression questionnaire, the anxiety questionnaire, stress levels, levels of loneliness, levels of therapeutic bond, these questionnaires we can borrow from clinical psychology. They can be a good proxy metric for that.
Yeah. Super interesting.
Right now, we're working on something we call internally Replica 2.0, which is really a huge, huge new step in what Replica can do, and new upgrade and capabilities. We're moving further away, I think, from the AI girlfriend space. I personally don't think that that's a very interesting space to be in. So we're
Yep.
not super excited about it. I'm interested in companionship and friendship. I do think that today AI is mostly built for time savers, whereas most people are time killers in a way. We all are both time savers, time killers, and when we're in the line, or on a plane, we're all time killers. And some other times in our lives, we're all time savers. But I do think that an AI companion to spend quality time together, not to save time, but to spend quality time together,
Yep.
that doesn't exist right now in the world. And this is what Replica should be and what Replica is focused on.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what were some major product launches over the last 7 years that made an impact on the experience? Whether it's, tuning the conversation or, making a change to how the avatar interacts or, the customized clothing or the memory or the journal. Like what are some products that really had an impact on people's experience?
The biggest impact, and there's still so much more to do in this space, is memory. What truly makes people fall in love and build a connection is shared experiences and shared memories. And without that, I think this product just doesn't exist truly without it. So any memory features that we've been launching in the last years, I think, played the biggest role. Everything else is important, but maybe not as important as memory.
Interesting. And so how do you build memory into the product?
That changed over many years, but I think from very early on in terms of designing a product with memory, designing a chatbot with memory, we told ourselves that since it's not perfect, uh, compared to even human memory, it's really not so great even now.
Yep.
We should show people what Replica remembers. So we
Right.
had that memory feature where people where everything that we pull from the conversation, put in memory, we show to our users and allow them to edit, remove, add something new.
Yep.
Uh, we were very pleasantly surprised when OpenAI added the same feature to ChatGPT because I do feel this is the way to go, and I was very astonished that they didn't have it for so
Yeah.
long this way. I've been thinking a lot about the interface, the correct interface to chatbots, and I still think we're in the Microsoft DOS era for AI, where the interface is just so bare bones. It's just a text input where you should see a lot more, really. So with Replica, everything that's been remembered, we allow you to customize, to edit, to add things to it. And even in the early days when it wasn't pre LLM days, that was a huge difference because people could add things that they want Replica to remember, and it was a lot easier for us with simpler models, smaller models to remember things. Today, of course, RAG and working with RAG in a certain way. Um, uh, it's a little bit harder for a product like Replica because you have to differentiate between many different types of information. So
Hmm.
we have to remember to think for a search product, all you need to do is to pull RAG on this particular topic. You don't need to also remember what your kids' names are and what relationship we're in and what we talked about 10 years ago and what we talked about 2 days ago, and that you had a headache. So, all these things that Replica at any point in a good AI companion should always keep in mind.
Yeah. And I'm like, in let's say 1 to 3 years, like how many AI companions or assistants are we going to have, right? Because I could imagine a scenario where you have a replica, it's your friend, but then maybe you also ask it to do things in your life, or you have a different replica that's more of a work related. I guess, like, what's the breadth of tasks that a replica companion will end up doing? Or do you think it's really better to just stay focused on the kind of emotional support, friendship, kind of personal companion and not blur the lines into like work assistant?
I think they're going to, that's a wonderful question, by the way. And
Mhm.
I think it's a very important question. In my view, they're going to be different flavors.
Yeah.
There's not going to be just one flavor. I cannot see just one assistant being the assistant for everything. Um, I think there are people that want to spend quality time with someone, that want to come back home from work and watch a movie together with someone. Uh, and then there are people that are super busy and don't have any time, and all they need is some help with their coding tasks at work.
Right.
And I think those two assistants would be very different assistants. You don't need a customizable avatar for your coding tasks,
Yep.
but it's kind of sad to talk to the same genderless thing without any appearance with the same voice and the same name as every other person talks to when you're watching a movie. You want it to know your quirks, to be a little bit different, to be, you want to customize a personality, you want
Wait,
to
can you
see it.
actually watch a movie with a replica?
That's something that we're working on. So really the kind of Replica 2.0 is all about having these wonderful activities,
Shared experiences.
shared
Wow, that's
experience
amazing.
that they can do
Yeah.
together, and just a much more premium experience. Um, but yeah, the goal is, of course, to be able to play a video game together
Right.
with your companion, or to, to walk to.
Finally
Uh,
have a use case for all the AI chess bots and go bots.
no, for sure,
Yeah.
but it's a very different flavor when you're, even when you're cooking with your replica, and she's saying something like, "Oh, like you're such a good cook. Like, where'd you learn this?" Versus just, "Hey, here's the recipe. I don't know, Siri or whatever, ChatGPT
Yeah.
or I don't know what assistant you're using." Because if you're just trying to really get going with your recipe and feed your family and go do something else, maybe you don't have time for this chit chat and this companionship. But if you're just by yourself cooking in the evening, you might really appreciate it. So
Yeah.
um, I think they're going to be very different flavors. I think in the end of the day, the modal capabilities that we're seeing now, they're all converging. But what you do with that, how the application layer looks like, I think that will be a very big question. I think people will absolutely choose their own thing, and we've even seen it with products we launched internally and tested. We built an AI dating product, and we thought a lot of Replica users will like it, and the models were very similar. We even used the same in the very beginning, and replicators were not interested in all at all because they're in a one-on-one friendship or romantic relationship. AI dating doesn't have anything to do with that. They were not
Right.
interested in that. So really, the form factor, the product, um, is very very important, not just the
Yeah.
model.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole thesis of this series, right? Is like you have this general intelligence, but the nuances of actually bringing it into a product makes all the difference. And so yeah, maybe let's leave it there. I mean, I feel very much more comfortable that the future of AI relationships is in your hands. I think you're taking a very mission oriented and values based approach to how you're building this. And thank you for, adding Replica to the world and pushing this industry forward from an early stage.
Thank you so much, Seth, for inviting me and for wonderful questions. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Product Led AI. You can find more information about today's interview and the entire series on the website productledaipod.com. You can subscribe to the show on all major podcast platforms and watch the video version of this interview on YouTube. And if you want to get all the links and details delivered right to you, sign up for my LinkedIn newsletter. I'm Seth Rosenberg, and this is Product Led AI.